Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well. One more week, and we're here. Welcome to Politics Done Right. This is Egberto Willies giving you the real word. Now, today I'm going to take on a touchy subject, the subject that everybody's going crazy about again. And we're going to keep touching this subject again and again because you know what? This is life and death. So what is it titled today? States not expanding Obamacare causing the deaths of citizens. Is that too graphic? Is it too graphic to say that our government, because of their policies, are killing people? Well, that's what's happening. Today's show is a discussion with you about the biggest poorly reported travesty occurring in our country. Some governors are causing the deaths of thousands of their citizens. While the talking heads on TV talk Obamacare strategy and how it will affect the 2014 elections, they continue to effect a disservice on every American citizen. Why? Because they concentrate on frivolities. The truly impactful aspects of Obamacare are undercovered, yet the fallacies are given plausibility. Where is the Charlene Dill story? Did anybody ever hear about Charlene Dill? You hear about the others. Where is the Elizabeth Hand story? I mean, that can be replicated all over this country, but you don't hear about it. Surely, in a mobile country like the United States, one has relatives in both red states and blue states. Everyone must be made aware of the different outcomes that result from the actions of their governors relative to the implementation of Obamacare in their respective states. If enough Texans, Floridians, Louisianians, Alabamians, and I hope I'm calling those ins correctly, but you know, I'm trying. You think I got those right, Roxy?
I think you did.
Okay, good. I'm trying. If those citizens of those states, or let me repeat, and I'm going to try those words again. If enough Texans, Floridians, Louisianians, Alabamians, and the citizens of other states not implementing Obamacare were well informed, governors, irrespective of party, would be forced to do the right thing. Absent valid information, many are stuck in a state of fear and confusion. So folks, let's talk about this issue in detail. Tell me your story. Give me a call. I really want to hear your concerns. There are some people who don't like Obamacare or what it's going to be like. Look, Obamacare is a law already. What isn't the law here is what Texas is not given its citizens, and that is the Medicaid expansion to Obamacare. And that is where I probably am going to concentrate my fire. However, I'd like to talk about the whole thing in general and what you really think about it. So before I get any further, though, last week we had 4 bloggers on, and one of the tenets of the discussion was that the media at large is not doing its job. Some were a bit more apologetic to the media than I was. I continue to take a hard line on the media because I believe the Constitution dictates that the free press is exactly that. The free press that should be monitoring government and monitoring for all practical purposes the powers that be so that we have an informed populace, and we're not getting that at all. So what I stated last week, and I'll probably continue to state on a yearly, or rather on a weekly basis, is that you must be the media. You must be the ones who find information and share information. You must be the one. And by the way, where do you share information? You know, it's kind of interesting. Most of the valid information that I'm getting these days don't necessarily come from the New York Times or the Washington Post, even though they may touch it somewhat. But it comes from other people right there on Facebook, right there on Tumblr, right there on Twitter. All these different instruments with people crowdsourcing media. Something is happening in Boston. I know it before it comes on TV. Something is happening in downtown Houston. I know it before it makes it on TV. And not only do I know it, many times I know it better than the reporter who is going to get it on TV. It's called crowdsourcing of news. If you get a whole lot of people in one place talking about one thing, it's a lot better than one person giving their point of view. So what I want to start with is by telling you that I want to mention those 4 bloggers, because these 4 bloggers have good sites that give you information. So please, I want to give a shout out to Tiffany Willis at the website liberalamerica.org and her Facebook page with that respective name. Catherine Ashen at burntorangereport.com. Stace Medellin at doscentavos.net. Charles Kuffner at offthecuff.com. These are very important websites that will have information that you can use, valid information. Of course, you want to always come to my site, politicsdoneright.com. politicsdoneright.com. And I want to give another shout out to a good friend that has very good prescient information for women to see, to read, and that is Michelle Michon at Texas Women Coalition on Facebook. And again, that is the Texas Women Coalition on Facebook. But we are going to start with you know what we're starting with? The blog report.
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Well, as you know, around this time, what do I normally do? I normally have a little blog post that's prescient, that I do quite a bit of research on, so that I'm ensuring that you have valid information. So this is what was posted on Daily Kos that I wrote for this particular week. And it goes as follows. The president stepped into the press room to discuss the crisis in Ukraine and to provide his sympathy to the Korean maritime tragedy on Thursday. He had a confident hop in his step as he approached the stadium. He had something big to say about health care. Actual Obamacare results are in, and in most cases, they are exceeding expectations. 8 million citizens are now enrolled in Obamacare. 35% of citizens enrolled in Obamacare are under 35 years old, so the young folks are starting to get on board. Obamacare has brought economic security to all consumers of health insurance. We'll discuss that later. Over 14 million have received insurance over the exchanges and via the Medicaid expansion to Obamacare. Medical cost is now growing at less than half the previous rates. Obamacare is shrinking the deficits. It is a fact that repealing Obamacare would increase the budget deficit, raise premiums, and take away insurance from millions of Americans. That is a fact. When asked if Democrats should begin or should campaign on Obamacare, President Obama said the following. Democrats should forcefully defend and be proud of the fact that millions of people like the woman I just described, who I saw in Pennsylvania yesterday, were helping because of something we did. I don't think we should apologize for it. I don't think we should be defensive about it. I think there is a strong, good, right story to tell. I think what the other side is doing and what the other side is offering would strip away protections from those families and from hundreds of millions of people who had health insurance before the law was passed, but never knew if the insurance company would drop them when they actually needed it, or women who were getting charged more because they are women. In his preamble to the news conference, he actually laid out the talking points. They were not at all defensive. It was a narrative from a position of strength, given the now provable Obamacare implementation realities. He said as follows, "I find it strange that Republican position on this law is still stuck in the same place that it has always been. They still can't bring themselves to admit that the Affordable Care Act is working. They said nobody would sign up. They were wrong about that. They said it would be unaffordable for the country. They were wrong about that. They were wrong to keep trying to repeal a law that is working when they had no alternative answer for millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions who would be denied coverage again, or every woman who would be charged more for just being a woman. It is well past time to move as a country and refocus our energies on the issues that the American people are most concerned about. And that continues to be the economy, because these endless, fruitless repeal efforts come at a cost. The 50 or so votes that were taken to repeal this law could have been 50 votes to create jobs, 50 votes to make it easier for middle-class families to send their kids to college, or 50 votes to raise the minimum wage or restore unemployment insurance. The repeal debate is and should be over. The narrative gets better, however. It went from a simple recitation of facts to a fact-based moral statement when President Obama said the following. States, and this is a whole tenet of this program here, states that have chosen not to expand Medicaid for no other reason than political spite. You have 5 million people who could be having health insurance right now at no cost to the states, zero cost to these states, other than ideological reasons. They have chosen not to provide health insurance for their citizens. That's wrong. It should stop. Those folks should be able to get health insurance like everybody else. Folks, in those few statements, the president laid out a narrative that, instead of being defensive of Obamacare, presents an offensive modal. Americans do not like weakness or defensiveness. Republicans have been winning elections with bad ideas because they're assertive in defending bad ideas. They're assertive in lying about helping, even as the policies materially hurt the vast majority of their constituencies. Obamacare now has fact-based numbers behind it. If these numbers are so good after a pathetically rocky rollout, just think what it could have been and what it will be going forward. That scares all those who have made it a mission to kill it. While President Obama's narrative above is decidedly pointed, civil, and characteristically presidential, Democrats must institute an Alan Grayson-like narrative in their stumps. Why? Because the outcomes of implementing a Republican repeal of Obamacare and subsequent expected inaction makes it true. Republicans have been airing ads that lie about people who were hurt by Obamacare. Where are the stories like the Charlene Dill story that I mentioned before, where the evidence is irrefutable? Charlene Dill is dead. That's right. Charlene Dill is dead. Had she had the reliable health care the Medicaid expansion to Obamacare would have provided, she would be alive today. Democrats or anyone supporting the Obamacare expansion to Medicaid must ignore ivory tower pundits. They must think outside of the box. Americans are waiting for politicians who will fight for them. Americans will show up if they think the politicians they are voting for have conviction. Americans want politicians who are willing to get into a street fight if necessary to defend and protect them. That is what the 2014 election must be. Running a status quo election will provide status quo results. We all know the definition of insanity. Roxy, do you know what the definition of insanity is?
doing the same thing over and over, expecting the same results, but getting the same results?
Exactly. I mean, look, I mean, that was a Bush way of saying it, but that is just about right. Oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that.
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. But here it is. Actually, you know, if I were to try to say it, I'll probably mess it up as well. So I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. But folks, this is KPFT. This is a call-in show. Please give me a call, 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. I want to hear from you. This is a big subject. It affects you. I really want to hear from you. So give me a call. Remember, this is KPFT. And before I go to John, I want to make one minor plea to you guys. I talk a whole lot about crowdsourcing news. I talk a whole lot about the media, how lousy the media is. When I talk about the Charlene Dill story, I can almost bet nobody here, except John that's coming up next, has ever heard her name. When I talk about the hand story, I can almost bet nobody, sans John, because John is a well-researched dude, always looking at information from these different sources, doesn't know who that is. And you know why you don't know who that person is? You don't know who that person is because nobody cares. Your media doesn't care. Your media is the media of the plutocracy who is towing a line. Stations like a Pacifica or the types of websites that I provide you or that you are probably going to provide me going forward when you find websites that give enlightening information is how we are going to move forward. So if you get a chance, folks, go to kpft.org and every so often give this radio station, a community radio station, a tip and make sure that we stay on the air. So John, come on in, my brother. ¿Cómo estás?
Good evening, Alberto.
How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. We've been talking about Medicaid expansion for over a year now on your internet show on Saturday at noon, so it's good to talk about it before a larger audience.
Absolutely. And you know, John, I keep telling folks, right, this is actually a life and death issue. And I will be darned if I'm not going to keep talking about this stuff. Because maybe the plutocracy doesn't care about their fellow citizens, right? I mean, you think about it. It's all about capital. That's all they care about. I don't. I have a daughter. I have a wife. I have a family. And going forward, if we don't have people that really start standing, what do you think is going to happen to the society at large? But come on and tell me what you want to say, my brother.
All right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think what the Republican governors and their legislatures are doing is cruel and sadistic, and I wonder if they're getting lobbied by the funeral industry.
Now, you know, I've been talking to you for a long time, and that is the first time you've actually cracked such a joke. That was a bad joke.
Okay. All right. Right. I mean, because the funeral, actually, the hospital lobby is much larger, and they want Medicaid expansion.
Yes.
So this is out of spite, totally. Yeah, I'll go ahead and quote a Harvard study first. For Texas, every year the needless deaths in the high end is 3,035, according to their study. The low end is 1,840 for not expanding Medicaid expansion. 1,046,000 people would be eligible in Texas if we had Medicaid expansion. The states opting into the Medicaid expansion will experience a decrease of 48.9% in their uninsured population versus an 18.1% decrease in opt-out state. We estimate the number of deaths attributed to the lack of Medicaid expansion, now this is from the Harvard study, it states between 7,115 and 17,104. Medicaid expansion in opt-out states would have resulted in 712,037 fewer persons screening positive for depression, 247,700 fewer individuals suffering catastrophic medical expenditures. Medicaid expansion in these states would have resulted in 422,553 more diabetics receiving medication for their illness, 195,492 more mammograms among women between the age of 50 and 64 years, 443,670 more pap smears among women aged 21 to 64. Expansion would have resulted in an additional 658,888 women in need of mammograms, gaining insurance, as well as 3.1 million women who should receive regular pap smears.
That is so sad. And, I want to add a bit to that. But before, I want to encourage people to call. Folks, 713-526-5738. There are a lot of lines open. I know there are people who really want to talk about this stuff. So give me a call, 713-526-5738. This is a subject that affects us all. John, you know what I think is, and notice that when I started the show, I actually said it was the travesty of the media. And the reason I spoke about it being the travesty of the media is quite simple. Think about this. The way the law was written. Texas has the ability. Let's say Texas said they don't want to take the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act because they don't that the state can't afford it. It's a silly argument because we're a rich state, but let's say that's the argument that they wanted to use. The fact of the matter is, to ensure all of the, actually it's 1 million Texans, you're in San Antonio, you know that, 1 million Texans that would be covered by the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. 1 million Texans. And you know how much that will cost every Texan? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. In other words, the 1 million Texans that Rick Perry can cover tomorrow will cost Texans nothing. Let me tell you a bit worse. It's even worse than that. Texans have already paid their taxes for the Affordable Care Act, and not accepting the expansion to Medicaid is a fiscal irresponsibility, because what you're telling Texans is, okay, Texans, all the new taxes that were passed in order to afford Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, which is actually, when people said that it was paid for, I'm sorry, it is the truth. This particular program was paid for. There's no doubt about it. It was paid for. And how did it get paid for? It was paid for with higher taxes. I mean, they don't advertise that too many times, but there was a tax placed on capital gains. There was a tax placed on higher income people. There's a lot of little taxes that, they spread it out in a whole lot of different areas, but they did increase taxes for the Obamacare expansion to Medicaid and the Obamacare in general. You don't get something for nothing. So that's a fact. Now, all these rich Texans right now have already paid for Obamacare. They have already paid for Obamacare. So the governor not accepting 100% monies back will cost the state nothing again, folks. Again, it's important for all Texans that are listening to this to realize what your governor is doing. You have already paid for Obamacare. You have already paid for the Medicaid expansion to Obamacare, the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. You've already paid for it. What your governor and all the politicians who are opposing this right now is saying is that we will not accept these monies. We will not expand Medicaid. And in doing so, what they're saying is, we are willing to have our citizens die because we do not like this particular program. If you don't like a program that is out there to help somebody, you don't let your citizens die. You get elected. If you don't like a program, if you think you could implement this program somewhat better, then you get elected. You present that to the American citizens and you say, I have a better option. And if I have a better option, please elect me. You know what? Americans did not. They did not elect these guys who are holding the system back. So that is a truth. That is the reality, and that is what you're not hearing, even on the stations that are supposed to be the liberal stations. ABC, CBS came out with a story that showed a woman with leukemia. I blogged about this at my site, politicsdoneright.com. I blogged about it. They went ahead and they presented a woman that had leukemia. The woman said on TV that she was so upset at having lost her bad insurance. Her insurance was actually a terrible piece of insurance that she had before. They could not renew the insurance because the insurance left her in debt after a certain amount of money is paid. So it was lousy insurance, and it also cost more. What happened? The Koch brothers, through their, what is it called? AFP? Americans for Progress is, I think, what they call themselves.
Americans for Prosperity.
For Americans for Prosperity. They create this commercial, and they show this woman crying. She says, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've lost my insurance. The problem about it is it's not true. And what the researchers did, and remember what I said about who finds out information. She was played up big on the network TVs. The media, the real media played her up big. The real media put her story on. Little guys from Salon.com and other small blog sites decided that they were going to do some research on their own. They found out that this young lady did not, her insurance, yes, it was canceled. That was true. But the insurance that she could get on the exchanges, and not only that she could get, but the insurance that she got on the exchanges was a lot better than what she had, and it actually saved her over $6,000 a year. They presented the information to her. They showed her the information, and you know what her answer was?
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. When they actually showed her further, she said, yes, but look at the deductible. And of course, the deductible was actually less than what it is. There's something that people don't understand about this famous deductible. The great thing about Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act right now, is that even if you have yes, it talks about the maximum deductible being $6,000. The mere fact that you're insured, do you think if you really get into a problem and you have to go to a hospital, the hospital is going to ask you about that deductible? Do you really believe that? The hospital doesn't want that. The hospital wants your money. And I just heard a little background echo in the system. But anyhow, the insurance company doesn't want that. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't really, what we're getting from the mainstream media is not reality. And one of the reasons Americans are so confused about healthcare is because of what they're hearing on TV and what I always call the plutocracy lying to the citizenry. The plutocracy lying to the citizenry. Now, earlier on, I spoke about a woman named Charlene Dill. You know, Charlene Dill is in Florida. And what's special about Florida? Florida does not offer the Medicaid expansion to Obamacare. They do not offer the Medicaid expansion. Charlene Dill was not some lady trying to look for a handout. Charlene Dill was a woman who had, I think, 4 kids. Charlene Dill was a woman who worked with another friend because she was a single mother. She sat down and she had a deal with a friend. They exchange who take care of the kids sometimes, but she goes out there and she goes out there to work. She had several part-time jobs. She had to travel away distance to find somebody that would give her some sort of a health care. She had to take some pills for some sort of an autoimmune disease that she had, and I think that broke down into giving her some sort of heart problems or something like that. But she was short on her medicine. And on her trip, on one of her jobs, she's on the porch. She goes to a lady's home, and she just falls out and dies. She's young. She falls out and she dies. That is exactly what we're looking at for all those that will be denying this type of coverage to Texans. Texans, yeah, will be falling out and dying, not because they had to, not because the money's not there, not because of any of those reasons. It's simply because our governor decide that he will not expand Medicaid for those residents who are, again, they're not people asking for handouts. These are people who fell within the gap. And what gap is that? They're working their hearts out, but they just don't have that extra amount of money to actually purchase health care, neither on the healthcare exchange or anywhere else. That's the only thing. That is what they are dealing with. They actually have the wherewithal. They're not poor. Or I shouldn't say that they're not poor, but they just couldn't do it. But John, so what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying completely. I just want to add some things. I mean, the Urban Institute estimated that the overall state savings in these areas will be between $26 and $52 billion from 2014 through 2019. Now, this report came out before the state started turning it down, and the Lowen Group says it would be $101 billion. Now, Kathleen Sebelius it was in Houston in February, and she said that every day Texans don't expand Medicaid, it costs them $10 million. Because, you know, if you think about it, all these people that are treated in emergency rooms that don't have the money to pay for that, I mean, how are these hospitals compensated? They're compensated through the federal government. And so if they already have coverage, it's going to save people money. And also if they're able to go to the doctor and take care of their health situations better, then it's going to be much better for everybody. So, I mean, the point is that, you know, the additional cost in the first 3 years, the federal government pays 100% of the cost. Now, after 2017 onward, they pay 90% of the cost. And so basically it's 2.8% of each state on average of their Medicaid budget. But, you know, like I said, I mean, when you add all the savings that will happen, you know, it's really a tremendous amount of money that these people are saving. And a lot of Republican governors realize that. I mean, Jan Brewer, I mean, I'm not a fan of these people, but I do give them props for actually doing something that's going to help the people. And John Kasich had a quote, and it says, when you die and get to the meeting, now I'm an agnostic, but I mean, this is his take. He says, meeting with St. Peter, he's probably not going to ask you much about what you did keeping government small, but he's going to ask you what you did for the poor, and you better have a good answer.
That is so true. I mean, you know, you have to look at it that way. But, you know, the thing about it beforehand, let me give another call out to the station. It's, folks, this is KPFT 90.1, KPFT FM. The telephone number is 713-526-5738. I'd love for you to give me a call, 713-526-5738. This is an important subject, and I am pretty sure there are many of you that have questions or are probably confused about what you're hearing here compared to what you hear on TV. How many of you really knew that covering everybody, that additional million Texans would cost our state nothing? Did you really know that? Did you really know that extra, that we in Texas can insure another million people, and there will be zero coming out of any more of your taxes, anything out of Rick Perry's pocket? Nothing. Now let's go a bit further. the federal government is paying 100% for the next 3 years. And after that, you know how much they're paying? 90%. So at most, there is then 10% that would be coming out of the Texas budget. So it is ridiculous. Now, here is the thing. When we started this program, I said one of the things that I'm going to want to do with a program like this is to tell folks that you're not impotent. You're not, a lot of people throw their hands up in the air and say, I can't really do anything about that. There's no point in me even getting riled up about this because there's nothing I can do. The reality is that there's a lot that you can do. The reality is that if Texas wants to have the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act, 2014, we can have it. There's no doubt about it. But the reason we don't have it right now is because there's a concerted effort to convince people that it is what it isn't. There is a concerted effort to misinform. So I'm going to tell you, if you have relatives that are not necessarily poor but just can't afford insurance, there's insurance out there for them. But your governor is stopping it from occurring, and the other person that's running to be governor as well, that's his position as well. So think about when you go to the polls in November, you really have an option to decide. You really have to decide if you are willing to continue the process that we've started in Texas, and that is effectively killing our citizens from neglect. And there's no two ways about this. You cannot look at this in any other way but one manner, and that is, it is heartless what we're doing to our fellow Texas citizens. Heartless. And as a state, we claim to be religious. As a state, we claim to be Christian. I know that goes against your better judgment, John, but as a state, that is what we claim. You go to where I live, there's a church on every few blocks, and most of those churches on that particular block refuse it. They are some of the ones that come out against this policy. A church. Think about it. Think about it. How can we ever consider this the right thing to do? How could we possibly consider this the right thing to do? Gary, you're up. Gary?
Yes, I have a question.
Please.
And I don't understand this. I'm familiar with the Affordable Care Act and everything that's been going on. What doesn't make sense to me is why they had a sign-up deadline, that if it wasn't done by this date, then you didn't get coverage. Why didn't they just leave it open for the whole year and next year and the next year?
There's a specific reason. There's a specific reason, and it's insurance is based on actuarial tables. Okay, in other words, what you have to do is you have to decide how much you're going to charge for insurance based on your pool. And your pool determines what the next year's rates are going to be. So there has to be some break off somewhere. And that is the reason why there's a deadline. Also, the next thing is, if you don't have a deadline, the normal thing people do is they just procrastinate and procrastinate and procrastinate, and not having a deadline is a permanent state of procrastination. So I mean, that's the reason you have to have some sort of a deadline. But do you follow exactly the reasons that I'm taking the stance with respect to what we're doing? Why what we're doing in Texas is pretty evil, right?
Well, it's not as much evil as ignorant.
Right.
I think it's more, people are focused on money, but I don't understand the logic of turning down free money.
Let me ask you something, Gary, because the tenet that I have is that our media is lousy, and that if most Americans knew exactly what what was in the law and the different options they would have, they would think differently about the program. Before we mentioned it. Did you know that this was pretty much free money?
Yes, I'm aware that the government is going to pay for the Medicaid expansion.
Okay.
Yes.
And did you know that after 3 years, it's also at 90%?
Right. Then why did the Texas legislature turn it down, or the governor turn it down if it's free?
Exactly. And the next question also is not only why did he turn it down, but why aren't the churches, why aren't all these big organizations out there in the streets screaming about such a fiscally irresponsible thing to do?
Well, do you have an answer?
I have.
That's one thing I never understood, unless it's an ideological issue with big government or something ridiculous. So why did they turn down this offer from the federal government?
And I love that you said ideological, because I wrote a blog piece where I actually said that. That's the reason I said our government in Texas is willing to kill Texans than kill their ideology. In other words, I prefer, in order to keep the purity of my ideology of small government and non-intervention, I rather see Texans dead.
Okay, well, it's interesting how the conservatives want small government and no intervention, unless it comes to something like abortion or or something that they support. You know, it's we can tell women what to do with their own bodies, but we can't tell people that they can't smoke pot. You know, it's an interesting thing. But anyway, well, I was just curious. You know, and then here's question number 2.
Okay.
Now that we have established the actuarian tables and the cost and the why, since the penalty is effective at the end of the year for your 2014 taxes,
right?
Why don't they just open it up again and give it another shot and give everybody that hasn't signed up a chance to sign up, which would be what their objective is, and not have to pay a penalty? Why not have a second round?
You know something? I am absolutely sure if we didn't have a dysfunctional Congress, and one of those Congress people, Senate, went to the White House and said, let's open this thing up to get more people in, I am absolutely sure they would do it. The problem is Republicans have no reason, no desire to open this up, because their wish is for this to fail. But let me tell you what is the most disconcerting thing about this, Gary. You ever heard of the Heritage Foundation?
Yes.
Okay. Obamacare is nothing more than his implementation of the Heritage Foundation, which is a Republican think tank, insurance
you say
policy.
That, I question that description, quote, think, unquote.
Well, you know what? I like you, Gary, because you are actually questioning that, because these are. I'm going to jump off subject a little bit here. There's this back in the 60s. Before he became a Supreme Court justice, there was a lawyer named Powell. I don't remember if it's William Powell or whatever. He wrote a memo which is known throughout the country as the Powell Memo. And in this memo, what he started to talk about is having to create institutions and going into schools and going into the media to put out an ideology that is pretty much anathema to what was going on in the country then. That is the rise of the unions, the rise of people seeking their freedoms, the rise of people looking for equality, the rise of people looking for good wages. And in order to do that, what he said, and I have that letter posted on my website as well, politicsdoneright.com or egbertowillies.com, whichever one you want to use will get you to the same place. And in that letter, he laid out exactly what is occurring today, and that is you must create institutions that are going to generate the types of policies that you want. And not only the types of policies, but to generate a policy, what do you need, Gary? You also need research, right? But if you need research and you need the research to say something that you want it to say, what do you need? You go ahead and you get a you get a particular group or a particular entity created, and they come out with all the policy that you want. They come out with all the research that you want, just in the point of view that you want to receive it in. And that's what he outlined in the Powell memo. And that came out back in, I think it was the mid-'60s. He became a Supreme Court justice, and henceforth we got the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, and all these different organizations that are out there putting out bad law, bad science, and all these other issues. And folks, for all those that are listening, you don't have to listen to me. You can actually go ahead and look it up yourself. It is called the Powell Memo. It's very, very... It's a long memo, it's a long read, but it's a worthwhile read. So that basically what you're asking for is, yeah, that's why things are the way they are right now, because we're in an indoctrinated state.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gary. So yes, folks. But did you hear that, John? what he said about why is it that we're doing what we're doing the way we're doing what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I want to make one little, I don't know if it's a correction or whatever, but what happened, I mean, they can sign up for, if we're just talking about Medicaid expansion
that
or
never
even
stops,
Medicaid at all, you can sign up any time for that.
You know what? Let me tell you something. That I'm so glad you came and you said that. That is extremely important, and I definitely don't want to do what the mainstream media does, and that is misinform. Gary, John is absolutely correct. The Medicaid expansion to Obamacare, the Medicaid expansion to Affordable Care Act, there is no deadline. You can go ahead and apply today, tomorrow. There is no deadline when you get that. It is when you're getting the policies from the exchange that has the deadline. Thank you, John. That was an important correction. Actually, that was a very important correction. I did say that, I did imply that it wasn't so thank you very much. But anyhow, it is important that people get this type of information. Now, to Texans, it doesn't really matter, right? Because they simply don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, what we have to do now is push, just like they've been doing all over the country. I mean, there was a large push to get all of the Republican governors to sign up. I mean, some of them were, intelligent about, how it's going to benefit their state, from a financial point of view. And so, like Jan Brewer and some of the others, like I mentioned before. But if you look at polling data, the polling data is so overwhelming. The latest polling data is that 71% of the people across the nation want to have Medicaid expansion, and that includes 62% of Republicans. And if you go to all these states that don't have it, I mean, the numbers are just overwhelming. I mean, it's 52 to 35 in Kansas, 58 to 33 in Florida, 59 to 30 in Pennsylvania, 54 to 38 in Georgia. And so, people really want this, and it really is an issue that the Republicans know they're going to have to deal with. And in fact, what they're trying to do in doing research for this, Arkansas and Iowa and Michigan were able to get waivers to where they were essentially able to privatize the
in other words, they actually got a third party to provide it, and that's the way they got around. Oh, it's government,
Right. I mean, it's definitely worse for the consumer, but I mean, you have to be put in, Sebelius or Obama's place and think, well, is this is it's obviously not a good compromise, but is it really going to help people in the end?
Yes, and the answer is yes.
I mean, I think it did help people. I mean, unfortunately, they do have to pay higher premiums, and they do have to pay more money. It's 5 to 7. I think it's 5% initially of their total income. But I mean, if you're in Medicaid expansion, you really don't make a lot of money.
Right.
And so, I mean, you're talking about maybe $500 for a year, which especially if you have a lot of health problems, isn't a lot. But what's happening also with states like Utah is that they're trying to push this even further, and they're trying to say things like, we'll sign up, but we want to do things like have a condition to where everybody has to have a job to actually be in the Medicaid expansion, which the Obama administration is not going to accept, because I mean, a lot of people, have faced tragedies in their life. They may have cancer. They may have been in a car wreck, and they can't work immediately after that. Also, people, because of the Great Recession, they're down on their luck.
And there's no job. There aren't any jobs.
That's right. And so, I was thinking about, whether they should just concede that, because they will help a lot of people. In fact, there's a real good website called Utahans for the Medicaid expansion. There's about 5 really good
what is it
examples
called?
of people who have their situations up there, and they're like begging for this,
right?
And so people really want this all around the country. And I just hope it's going to be, kind of like the CHIP program. A lot of people didn't sign up. Texas didn't sign up right away, but eventually they did. There was just so much political pressure, and that's what we have to do. We have to put pressure, and you're right, it has to come from the ballot box.
Right.
And
and that's why programs like this, and this is what I hope to do with a whole lot of these programs, take on actual issues and tell people that they can actually go out there and do something, right? In other words, don't sit back there and think, I cannot do anything about it. I need this, but I can't do anything about it. Right now, there are a lot of organizations, and we are going to be gearing up. I can tell you that we are going to be block walking for particular candidates who decide that they are going to be supporting policies, middle class centric policies. Those are the candidates that will be receiving support, and what we must do. I mean, if you are going to actually make a change, you have to go out there on the front lines, folks. This is KPFT FM 90.1. It's in Houston, it's 90.1, Galveston 89.5, Huntsville 89.7, Livingston 90.3. The telephone number is 713-526-5738. I really expected to get more calls on this issue that I didn't get. I really thought more folks would have called in. Especially, I didn't necessarily think that I would have gotten a whole lot of calls from, let's say, folks that already support it, because a lot of times these are folks that says, well, I support it, I throw my hands up. But I really thought I would have gotten some calls from those people who really oppose it. So just maybe everybody is starting to love the thing and realize what the reality is. And is that the case, folks? 713-526-5738. 713-526-5738. I just got something in my ears where Roxy said, you only have 5 minutes left. Hurry up. But Roxy, do you have health care?
Yes, sir, I do. But I'm one of those 23-year-olds that are still on mommy and daddy's plan until they're 26.
Oh, wow. So in other words, you are in Red, Texas, and you are taking advantage of Obamacare. So that's your own personal testimony.
I am. I didn't really think about it too much until I started moving out here, because I moved out here in September. And luckily my mom and dad have been supporting me up until just recently. And they said one of the things I don't have to worry about is my health insurance, just because I'm going to be on their plan until I'm 26. And so there's just no reason for me to worry about getting different health insurance. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those, burdens, just because I don't really know anything about health insurance. Maybe that's just me, just because my parents have always, taken care of it. And so I wouldn't really know where to go.
No, but you said you're 23, right?
Yes.
I mean, the reality is that is a 23-year-old story. I mean, I mean, if you poll anybody, my daughter's 22 years old, and she knows about it because her dad, that's all he talks about. Obamacare, healthcare.
Yes.
You know, but I mean, she knows about it but it is expected that young folks don't know a whole lot about insurance. But the thing about it is your parents know now that the Affordable Care Act actually gave them the ability, especially for young people in times of where it's so difficult to get a job. Isn't that great? I mean, it is amazing that can actually happen. You know what I mean, John? It's amazing that she is able to use Obamacare, not even noticing that based on the law, she's covered and need not worry about any of those particular issues anymore. It looks like I'm getting another call in. Is that coming on, or I think that is Joe. Come on in, Joe.
Yeah, hi.
Talk to me, Joe.
A big ally in this fight are the companies that would get these revenues. You know, we're talking about $90 billion over 10 years.
Right.
Which has a multiplier effect, which is at least 1.5, which makes it, about $135 million.
Yes.
Billion dollars. Or it could be as high as 2, which would be $180 billion. Well, these companies are going to lose all that. People that provide the consumables, that would have employees there. They are the natural allies to go after the governor and say, hey, shithead, get up there and do something about this. We can't keep losing this much cash flow throughout our state.
Yeah, I hear you. But, I mean, as it turns out, it's a shame that is the case. But I am sorry that we are running low on time, Joe. But you are absolutely correct. Yeah, thank you, sir. You're absolutely correct that what we're supposed to do is since the governor won't listen, is to ensure that others listen through him. But anyway, John, give me a quick closer here. You got 30 seconds.
I'll just say the ACA success story. This is one from Tim Justice. It says, insurance was taking more and more of my take-home pay. I left the job with about 30% of my take-home pay and was going to insurance premiums to a job that was about 15%. And then the company cut our benefit. An insurance plan with $5,000 deductible that didn't pay a dime until the deductible was met. Now we're covered thanks to the expanded Medicaid and taking away the excessive cost of insurance has allowed me to open up my own business. I still want to see single-payer system, but will agree that for many working Americans, this is better than what we had.
Thank you, John. I'm right down at a hard break. Folks, thank you very much for listening to another edition of Politics Done Right. Please do remember, politicsdoneright.com. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.
What do Muslims worldwide think about issues such as gender, prejudice, terrorism, and democracy? You can join the Peacemakers of Unity Church on Saturday, May 3rd from 10 a.m. till noon for the film Inside Islam, What Do a Billion Muslims Really Think? The film will be screened and a panel of academic experts and everyday Muslims will be there to respond to issues and questions after the viewing. The film challenges the notion that Muslims in the West are on a collision course. Like the research, the film highlights shared relationships that are based on facts, not fear. The screening and panel discussion will be at 2929 Unity Drive, Houston, Texas, 77057. For more information, you can visit unityhouston.org. This is 90.1 KPFT, Houston.
someone you know own a local dining establishment? KPFT has a pledge drive coming up, and each drive, restaurants in the area